Hi, it's Hope and welcome to the video. This is going to be me doing the Nope Trope book tag that was created by Zoe from Zoe's All Booked. I will have her original video in the description. I found this tag a few months ago. I wrote the questions down, but I never had time to film it, so I am doing it now. And this tag is based off of, if I'm not mistaken, tropes that Zoe from Zoe's All Booked doesn't like necessarily, I think. I haven't watched the video in a while and I didn't really have the time to rewatch the video. So if I got that part wrong, I'm sorry. But what I will do is I will read out the question, and each question corresponds to like a trope. And I'm going to give my opinion on the trope of if I like it, if I don't like it, and then answer the question and kind of all that. You'll see how it kind of goes. So let's get started with the first question. So first question, I'm going to be looking over here because I have my answers, like the questions over here, so I can answer them. So eavesdropping with miscommunication. Name a book that you heard great things about and expected to love but ended up hating. And for the eavesdrop and miscommunication trope, it's okay. I don't overly love it, but I don't overly hate it. I'm mediocre with it. It causes a lot of drama. But for a book that I've heard great things about, expected to love, and ended up hating would have to be The Night Circus by Erin and Morgenstern. And this I DNF'd at, I think, about 100 pages in, I think. And I just wasn't liking it. It's about this circus that only shows up at night, and these two different people with magic competing to make the circus better, I think. I don't know. Again, I DNF'd it with 100 pages. I didn't like the writing style. I didn't really like the plot or the characters, because we were going through like multiple timelines and like going through the characters at different ages, and then we were jumping around a lot. I didn't like it. I read this book in March. Yeah, in March, and just didn't like it. So that's what I'd have to say for that. Love triangles. Name a series where you can't pick your favorite book. Love triangles. I love love triangles so much. And for name a series that you can't pick your favorite book, I'd have to either say the Shadow Game series by Amanda Foody. There is the third book, first book being Ace of Shades, the second book being King of Fools, and the third book, which I do not have a copy of, being Queen of Volts. I love all of these books so much, but I can't pick a favorite because they're all so good. Like, they're equally so good, and I can't pick one. Or I would have to say Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. I love them both so much. But I should probably actually explain what this is about. Ace of Shades is about, like the Shadow Game series is about a girl named Anne who travels to the city of New Rains to find her mother who went missing, and she ends up getting help from this gang lord named Leigh, and we go from there, and we have to go through this thing called the Shadow Game and all of that, and then there's the aftermath of that, and then more, yeah. And then Six of Crows is about a group of characters who have to do this impossible heist led by the notorious Kaz Brecker, and it's very morally gray. Both of these series are actually very similar in elements. They have like the gangs and the morally gray characters and the crime and all of that, and I guess that's what I like since I can't pick a favorite out of those. Ooh, Not Like Other Girls / I Didn't Know I'm Beautiful. Name a book that has a pretty cover but was boring as hell. So for the Not Like Other Girls / Don't Know I'm Beautiful trope, I don't really like that, but it's seen so often that I have to push through it. And for a book that was pretty cover, boring as hell, I would have to go with Of Ice and Shadows by Audrey Coulthurst, and this is a sequel to Of Fire and Stars. And Of Fire and Stars follows, we follow a princess named Denna who travels to this palace because she is betrothed to the prince, and Denna and the prince's sister named Mare end up forming a friendship, and then that friendship between Denna and Mare ends up involving into a romance, and then the sequel is Denna and Mare have traveled somewhere, and I can't really say much more because of spoilers, but Of Ice and Shadows took me over a month to read. It felt so like trudgy, and I constantly had to put it down for a while because it was so boring. Yes, the last like 100 pages were good, but everything just felt like so slow and so unnecessary and boring almost, but I did like it. All-consuming love. Name a book that gave you a book hangover. For all-consuming love, I don't really have an opinion on that trope, but for a book that gave you a book hangover, I have two. Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. This is the first book in the Last Hours trilogy, and the Last Hours follows Shadowhunters in 1903 Edwardian London, when, as new Shadowhunters move into London, this mysterious illness travels through the world of the Shadowhunters and all of that, and I'm not going to say much more because of spoilers, but I didn't technically fall into a book hangover, but I just kept on thinking about this book. Even once I started the next few books after I read this, I just kept on being all like, oh, that, and like so many things from this. And I desperately want to reread this so bad. I love it so much. And then the next book that gave me a pretty big book hangover was I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver. And in I Wish You All the Best, we follow Ben, who just came out as non-binary to their parents, and their parents kick them out, and they have to go live with their sister. And it's them going through their final semester of school and dealing with everything that comes with being kicked out of their home, having to live with their sister, and dealing with depression and anxiety and not feeling accepted, and all of that. And this was a very emotional read for me. I just was like very into it and very like, I hope that this character ends up happy and all of that, and it's one of my favorite like contemporary reads now, and I loved it so much. I just kept on I read it in a day. I read it literally in almost one sitting basically, and I love this book so much, and it just for the longest time I just kept on thinking about it, even randomly now, and even now 7-8 months later, will just randomly think back and just be like, oh, I love the book, and then aspects about the book. So yeah. Next we have number 5, Douchebag Boyfriend. Name a book that it took you a while to get into, but you ended up loving. And this was a kind of hard question because there wasn't really that I could think of off the top of my head, but I would have to go with probably House and Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. And this didn't necessarily take me a while to get into. It just, things I had to keep on rereading to understand what was going on and understand the lore of the world, because it is an adult fantasy, and this is one of the few adult fantasy that I've read, truly read. So it took me a while to get into and grasp and all of that. and House of Earth and Blood is, ooh, how do I even describe this? We follow a girl named Bryce who, who ends up having to solve these murders because they are possibly linked to a person in her past and all of that. And this is a very like high fantasy world. We have so many different species. We have like humans, we have fays, we have angels, we have werewolves, and so many more that I just can't think of them off the top of my head, but it's just a very, very high fantasy setting that took a while to grasp everything, and even now still, after I finished it and had time to sit on it a lot, I'm still like, I'm sorry, what? So it's something that a second reread will definitely be required to understand everything. And then finally, tell us your favorite or least favorite trope. Well, I'm gonna go with 4 favorites because like I have 4 favorites. I don't really have any tropes that I don't like, so I will start off with, enemies to lovers, and that would have to go with A Court of Thorns and Roses, but more specifically A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. And this series, I have just the first 2 here. I have the other 2 on my shelf. But this series follows a girl named Farah who ends up killing a wolf, and she doesn't realize that that wolf is a fae that has shapeshifted. So she gets dragged into a fairy to receive a punishment. Like her punishment is to be taken into fairy and all of that. And I'm just going to leave that at that, but this doesn't really have that big, it's not like huge enemies to lovers, but I still love it. Another enemies to lovers that I love is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I'm not really going to explain that one, but because this is like what I'd have to say. So we have that. Next we have love triangles, which I mentioned earlier, but my favorite love triangle would have to be the love triangle in The Infernal Devices, first book being Clockwork Angel, and in this we follow Tessa Gray, who has traveled from New York to London to find her brother, who mysteriously like dropped connection with her a few months prior, and she ends up getting dragged into the shadow world. We are in 1878, like London. Tessa ends up going to the London Institute and meeting shadow hunters, and then she ends up falling in this love triangle between 2 characters named Jen and Will, and it is my all-time favorite love triangle. Like all time, it is so perfectly written, and it's to the point that like you don't care who she ends up with because you fall in love with them both yourself. And I want to do a reread of this so bad now, like ugh. And the next one, which isn't like my favorite, but I do kind of like it, especially because of this recommendation, but that is Forbidden Love. And for Forbidden Love, I would have to pick like Lady Midnight and just overall The Dark Artifices by Cassandra Clare. Yes, there's a lot of Cassandra Clare on this list. Cassandra Clare is my favorite author. But this follows Emma Carstairs, who 5 years ago her parents were murdered, and she does not believe that the person who murdered her parents was actually the person that murdered her parents because the MO is different. And we also follow Blackthorn siblings, and Emma's parabatai is Julian Blackthorn, and we follow Emma and the Blackthorns figuring out this mystery and all of that, and I cannot say why this is Forbidden Love, but this Forbidden Love, I like just finished rereading Lady Midnight and Lord of Shadows. I literally finished Lord of Shadows last night, and I'm literally about to start Queen of Air and Darkness. tonight. So like this series is fresh in my mind. That forbidden love is just like right there, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's forbidden, but I love it. So yeah. And then finally, another trope that I like is found families, and that would have to be my favorite of found families would have to be Six of Crows, which I already mentioned before. So I really hope that this video is fun. I struggled with a few of these. Also, for some of them, there's multiple other ones that I could have fit for these prompts, but I was like, oh, these ones work the best, or these are my favorites from said trope. But I'm a person that tropes don't really bother me that much. I don't pay attention to tropes, really. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye!